The war had lasted 30 years, and everyone was tired of it. The Velthari Empire controlled hundreds of star systems, their ships moving through space like silver ghosts. Humanity, younger and smaller, had somehow held their ground. Neither side could win, so they decided to try something different. They would join their people through marriage. Princess Arin Valesh stood in the grand hall of the neutral station, surrounded by officials from both sides. Her violet skin caught the light from the viewing windows, where stars stretched endlessly in all directions. She was young by her people's standards, only 127 years old. Her silver eyes watched the crowd with calm patience. The Velthari lived for centuries, sometimes millennia. They had time to be patient about everything. She had volunteered for this. When the Empress announced that one of her daughters must marry a human to seal the peace treaty, Arin had stepped forward before her sisters could speak. It was her duty. She would save her people from more war, even if it meant binding herself to a creature that would die in mere decades. Humans were strange to the Velthari. They lived such short lives, barely 100 years if they were lucky. They felt emotions too strongly, made decisions too quickly, and threw themselves into danger without proper thought. But they were also stubborn and surprisingly clever. The war had proven that much. No one expected humanity to last 3 decades against the Empire. Arin could sense emotions from other beings. It was a gift all Velthari possessed, though hers was stronger than most. She could feel the anxiety of the diplomats around her, the curiosity of the journalists recording everything, the cold satisfaction of the military commanders who were glad the fighting would end. It was like hearing whispers in her mind, each voice telling her what others felt. The doors opened, and the human delegation entered. She spotted him immediately. Tae Sung walked with the careful posture of someone who had been a soldier. He wore formal clothes in dark colors, and his face showed nothing. He was tall for a human, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to look right through the ceremony and see something else beyond it. He was 32 years old. The information brief had told her that. To her, he was practically a child. Yet, he moved, like someone who had seen too much. Their eyes met across the hall. Arin reached out with her empathic sense, trying to understand the man she would marry. But something strange happened. She could barely feel him. Most beings were like open books to her, their emotions clear and bright. Tae Sung was different. There was something there, something distant and carefully locked away. But she couldn't read it. It was like looking at a star through thick fog. This troubled her more than she expected. The ceremony began. An official from the Velthari Empire spoke in their musical language about unity and peace. A human ambassador translated and added words about hope and new beginnings. Arin and Tae Sung stood side by side, 2 strangers about to become something more, at least on paper. When it was time for them to speak, Arin went first. She recited the words she had memorized, promising to honor this union and work for peace between their peoples. Her voice was steady and clear. She had been trained for this since childhood. Then Tae Sung spoke. His voice was quieter than she expected, but firm. He promised the same things she had, using human words that sounded harsher than her language but somehow more direct. When he finished, he looked at her again, and she saw something flicker in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or regret. But it vanished before she could be sure. They sealed the marriage according to both customs. For the Velthari, this meant joining hands while a crystal between them glowed with shared life energy. For humans, it meant an exchange of rings. The metal felt strange on her finger, cold and heavy. Tae Sung's hands were warm when they touched hers, warmer than she expected. Velthari ran cooler than humans. It was one of many differences she would have to get used to. The crowd applauded. Cameras recorded everything. This moment would be broadcast across both civilizations, proof that peace was possible. Arin smiled, because it was expected. Tae Sung nodded to the crowd with that same neutral expression. After the ceremony, There was a reception. Diplomats and officials mingled, pretending this was a normal wedding instead of a political arrangement. Erin found herself standing near a window, looking out at the stars, when Taesung approached. "You can sense emotions," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Erin replied. "It's common among my people, and you tried to sense mine." She looked at him sharply. "How did you know?" "Because you looked confused when we met," Taesung said. No one ever looks confused when meeting someone for the first time, unless they expected something different. Erin considered lying, then decided against it. They would be living together. Lies would only make things harder. "You're difficult to read," she admitted. "Most beings are transparent to me. You're like a wall." "Good," Taesung said quietly. "Why good?" He was silent for a moment, looking out at the stars. "Some things are better kept private." Erin wanted to ask more, but a group of ambassadors approached them, wanting introductions and photographs. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of faces and false smiles. By the time it ended, Erin was exhausted. The Velthari didn't tire easily, but the constant mental noise of everyone's emotions had worn her down. A ship waited to take them to their new home, a planet called Threshold Prime that sat on the border between human and Velthari space. It had been built specifically for cooperation between their species. Neither of them had chosen it. Neither of them had chosen any of this. As they boarded the ship, Arin watched Taesung from the corner of her eye. He moved through the corridors with practiced ease, finding his quarters without help. She wondered what he was thinking, what he was feeling behind those walls he kept so carefully maintained. She wondered if she would ever truly know the man she had married. The ship's engines hummed to life, and they left the station behind. Ahead lay Threshold Prime, and a life neither of them had wanted, but both had accepted. Erin sat in her cabin and removed the metal ring from her finger, studying it in the light. It was such a simple thing, this human custom. Just a circle of metal, but it represented something enormous and terrifying. She had married a human for peace. Now she would have to learn what that truly meant. Outside her window, the stars blazed cold and distant, just like the man who was now her husband. Threshold Prime was a beautiful planet, carefully designed to accommodate both species. The residence they were given sat on a hill, overlooking a valley, where human and Velthari architecture blended together. The building had high ceilings for Arin's people and comfortable temperatures for humans. It was perfect in the way that artificial things often are, without any real warmth. The first week passed in careful politeness. Erin and Taesung moved around each other like dancers who had never practiced together. They ate meals in the same room, but said little. They slept in separate bedrooms. They attended meetings and public events, playing the role of the united couple, then returned home to their careful silence. Erin tried to understand human customs. She learned that they drank something called coffee in the mornings, hot and bitter. She learned that they valued directness in conversation, unlike her people who preferred subtle meanings. She learned that Taesung woke at dawn every day to exercise, moving through combat forms with focused precision. She watched him sometimes, from the balcony outside her room. He would practice in the garden below, his movements fluid and controlled. There was something almost meditative about it, the way he moved, but even then, she couldn't sense what he was feeling. That wall remained firmly in place. On the 8th day, Taesung's sister visited. Ji-woo was younger than her brother, maybe 25, with bright eyes and an easy smile. She studied alien biology at the university on Threshold Prime and seemed genuinely excited to meet Arin. "He's always been like this," Ji-woo said cheerfully, sitting in the kitchen while Erin prepared tea the Velthari way. "Quiet. Keeps everything inside. Drives our whole family crazy." "Does he talk to you?" Erin asked. "Sometimes. More than he talks to most people." Ji-woo accepted the tea and sipped it carefully. He wasn't always this closed off. Before the war, he used to laugh more. But after our parents died, something changed. Aaron's hand stilled on the teapot. I didn't know he lost his parents. Jiwoo looked surprised. He didn't tell you? They died in a raid on one of the outer colonies. Velthari attack. About 10 years ago. The words hit Aaron like a physical blow. She had married a man whose parents her people had killed. No wonder he kept walls between them. No wonder he could barely look at her sometimes. I'm sorry, Aaron said quietly. I didn't know. It's not your fault, Jiwoo said, but her smile had faded. War does terrible things to everyone. That's why this peace matters so much. That's why what you and my brother are doing matters. After Jiwoo left, Erin found herself thinking about what she had learned. She wanted to ask Taesung about it, but how could she? The information felt too private, too painful, so she said nothing, and the silence between them grew heavier. A friend of Taesung's visited often. Ha-jun worked as security detail for the diplomatic quarter, and he had a loud laugh that filled their quiet house. He treated Erin with friendly respect, always asking about her people's customs and sharing stories about human culture. Sometimes he brought food from different human regions, insisting she try everything. Taesung is lucky, Ha-jun said one evening, when the three of them shared dinner. Getting to marry a princess. Very romantic. It's politics, Taesung said flatly. Can't it be both? Ha-jun grinned. Politics and romance? Taesung didn't answer. But Aaron noticed he gripped his fork a little tighter. The festival came in the third week. It was a human celebration, something about the founding of their colony on Threshold Prime. The streets filled with music and lights, and everyone was expected to attend, including the famous married couple. Aaron wore a dress that combined Velthari and human styles, and Taesung wore formal human clothes. They walked through the festival together, surrounded by security, but trying to appear relaxed. People called out greetings, children ran past laughing, and music played from every corner. Aaron watched the humans dancing with wild energy, their faces bright with joy. They threw themselves into the celebration with complete abandon, as if this moment was the only thing that mattered. Her people celebrated too, but with calm grace, their movements controlled and refined. This was different. This was fierce and loud and fully alive. Your people celebrate like they're running out of time, she said to Taesung. He looked at the dancers, then at her. We are, he said simply, always. Something in his voice made her chest feel tight. Before she could respond, Ha-jun appeared with drinks, and the moment passed. The dinner that followed was held in a large hall with important people from both civilizations. Aaron sat beside Taesung at the high table, smiling and making polite conversation. Everything seemed normal until it wasn't. The explosion came without warning. One moment, diplomats were chatting over their meals. The next, the wall behind them erupted in fire and smoke. People screamed. Tables overturned. Guards shouted orders while drawing weapons. Aaron's training kicked in immediately. She rolled behind cover, her mind racing. An assassination attempt. Someone wanted the peace to fail. She looked around for Taesung and saw him moving toward her through the chaos. Then she saw the second attacker, raising a weapon, pointing it directly at her. Time seemed to slow down. She couldn't move fast enough. The weapon charged with a high-pitched whine. This was how she would die, she thought distantly. This was how the peace would end. Taesung hit her from the side, knocking her down. His body covered hers as the energy blast fired. She heard him grunt in pain, felt him shudder against her, and smelled the terrible scent of burned flesh. No, she whispered. Security swarmed the area. The attackers were taken down. Ha-jun appeared, shouting for medics, helping to pull Taesung off of Aaron. She saw the burn across his back and shoulder, saw his face going pale with shock, saw his eyes starting to lose focus. And then, for just a moment, his walls fell. Aaron's empathic sense suddenly flooded with everything he had been hiding. Pain. Yes. But beneath that, was something vast and burning. Memories flashed through the connection. A younger Tae-sung laughing with his parents. The same boy standing in ashes, screaming. A soldier carrying wounded comrades through enemy fire. Nightmares that never ended. Guilt that ate at him constantly. But there was also something else. Something that blazed like a star inside him. Fierce and hot, and utterly overwhelming. It was emotion so intense, it almost hurt to feel. Love and rage and determination and hope all mixed together, burning with an intensity her people never experienced. Humans felt everything so much more strongly. They had to. They had so little time. "Stay with me," she found herself saying, gripping his hand. His eyes found hers, struggling to focus. "Had to," he mumbled. "Couldn't let you." Then he lost consciousness. The medics took him away. Erin stood in the destroyed hall, her dress covered in his blood, her mind reeling from what she had felt. Around her, people shouted and cried, and tried to make sense of the attack, but she barely heard them. She had touched his soul, just for a moment, and it had blazed so bright she could still feel the afterglow. Ha-jun found her standing there, his face grim. Arin nodded, unable to speak. She looked down at her hand, still feeling the warmth of Tae-sung's grip. He had thrown himself in front of death for her without hesitation. This man who had every reason to hate her people. This man she barely knew. This man whose soul burned like a star. She followed the medics to the hospital and refused to leave. If Tae-sung had been willing to die for her, the least she could do was be there when he woke up. If he woke up, in the quiet of the medical bay, Erin finally understood something important. This marriage might have started as politics, but it had just become something else entirely. She just didn't know what yet. The medical bay was quiet, except for the soft beeping of machines. Arin sat in a chair beside Tae-sung's bed, watching him breathe. He had been unconscious for 3 days. The doctors said he would live, that the burns were serious but treatable. They said he was stable. They said she should rest. She didn't leave. Ji-woo visited every day, bringing food Arin didn't eat and news she barely heard. Ha-jun came too, standing guard outside the door, as if the attackers might return. The investigation continued elsewhere, but Erin didn't care about that. She cared about the man in the bed who had saved her life. Without his walls, without his consciousness to maintain them, she could feel everything. Her empathic sense connected to him constantly now. And what she felt was overwhelming. Humans didn't just feel emotions. They experienced them like storms, fierce and powerful and consuming. Even unconscious, even in pain, Tae-sung's inner world blazed with intensity. She experienced his dreams, his memories, things he had never told anyone. She saw him as a child, running through the streets of Seoul District with Ji-woo, both of them laughing under a purple sky. She felt his love for his parents, warm and simple and pure. Then she felt the day that love shattered. The emergency alert. The evacuation that came too late. Standing in the ruins of the colony, knowing his parents were gone, buried somewhere. In the destruction. The Velthari ships had already left. They never even knew what they had destroyed. She felt him join the military, driven by rage and grief. She felt him in combat, fighting with desperate fury. She felt him kill, and saw the faces of the enemies he had ended. Most of them were Velthari. Most of them looked like her. But then she felt something else. A mission gone wrong. His unit trapped behind enemy lines. He had made a choice, drawn fire to himself so others could escape. He had survived, but barely. And in the medical tent afterward, delirious with fever, he had heard 2 officers talking. The raid that killed his parents hadn't been authorized. It had been a rogue captain, later executed by the Velthari Empire itself for violating engagement protocols. His parents had died for nothing, in a battle that should never have happened. Erin felt his guilt crystallize in that moment. He had killed so many for revenge, and it had all been pointless. The Empire hadn't murdered his parents. One criminal had. And he had become a killer for a lie he told himself. She pulled back from the memory, tears on her face. The Velthari rarely cried, but this pain felt too large to contain. She understood now why he had volunteered for this marriage. He saw it as penance, a way to build instead of destroy. A way to somehow balance the scales for all the lives he had taken. On the fourth day, a doctor found her still sitting there. Dr. Yunseo was a kind woman with tired eyes who had been treating Tae-sung since he arrived. "You need to rest," Yunseo said gently. "You're no good to him if you collapse." "I can feel him," Aaron said quietly. "His emotions, they're so intense." Yunseo pulled up a chair and sat down. "You're Velthari, right? You sense emotions?" "Yes. But I've never felt anything like this." "Is it normal? For humans?" The doctor smiled sadly. "Yes. Humans feel everything more strongly than most species. Our lives are short. You see, we only get 70, 80, maybe 100 years, if we're very lucky. We don't have time to feel things slowly. Everything hits us harder. Joy, pain, love, grief. We burn through emotions the way our sun burns through fuel. Hot, and fast, and bright. "It seems exhausting," Aaron said. "It is, but it's also beautiful." Yunseo looked at Tae-sung. "We make the most of the time we have. We love deeply, because we know it won't last forever. We fight fiercely because every moment matters. Your people have the luxury of time. We don't. So we burn bright, instead." The words settled over Aaron like a revelation. She had thought humans were impulsive, reckless, too emotional. But maybe it wasn't a flaw. Maybe it was adaptation. They had evolved to feel everything intensely because they had to fit entire lifetimes into such a brief span. "He dreams of you," Aaron said softly. Yunseo raised an eyebrow. "Me? No. I mean, he dreams. And you're in some of them. Ji-woo, Ha-jun, his parents, all the people he loves." Aaron hesitated. "I see myself there too, sometimes. I don't know why. Maybe he's starting to care about you," the doctor said. "It's possible, you know, to develop real feelings. Even in an arranged marriage. He hates my people. They killed his parents. His parents were killed by one criminal, not by your people," Yunseo corrected. "There's a difference. And hate is a heavy thing to carry. Maybe he's tired of carrying it." On the fifth day, Tae-sung woke up. His eyes opened slowly, confused and unfocused. Aaron was there immediately, standing over him. "Don't move," she said. "You were injured. You're in the hospital. You're alive," he mumbled, his voice rough. "Because of you." He closed his eyes again, breathing carefully. "Good. Why did you do it?" The question burst out of her before she could stop it. "You could have died. Why did you protect me? Why? 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 Why did you protect me?" Tae-sung was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Couldn't let you die. Not for this. Not for peace." Quote, "I don't understand. I've caused enough death," he said, opening his eyes to look at her. Aaron felt her throat tighten. "I know about your parents," she said quietly. "I'm sorry. I felt it while you were unconscious. Your memories. Your pain. I didn't mean to invade your privacy, but without your walls." She expected anger. Instead, Tae-sung just looked tired. "So now you know. The man you married is a killer. Someone who slaughtered your people for revenge. The man I married is someone who was hurt and lied to," Aaron said firmly. "You thought the Empire murdered your parents. You didn't know it was a rogue captain. You didn't know he was executed for his crime." Tae-sung stared at her. "What? The raid that killed them wasn't authorized. The captain responsible was caught and executed by our own military. It violated our engagement protocols. Your parents weren't enemy casualties. They were victims of a war criminal. She watched the information hit him, watched his face crumble as the foundation of his guilt shifted beneath him. I killed so many people, he whispered. For nothing. No, Aaron said, surprising herself with the fierceness in her voice. Not for nothing. You fought in a war. A real war. With real causes. What happened to your parents was a tragedy, but it wasn't the only reason to fight. Both our sides did terrible things. But now we're trying to build something better. That's not nothing. Tears ran down his face. And he didn't try to hide them. Aaron had never seen a grown male cry before. Her people didn't do this. Didn't let emotions spill out so openly. But Taesung cried like his grief had been trapped for years, and finally found a way out. She reached out and took his hand. It was warm. Always so warm. You don't have to carry this alone anymore, she said. I'm here. I'm your wife. Not just on paper. I'm here. His fingers closed around hers, gripping tight. I felt you, he said. When I was unconscious, I felt you there. Like an anchor, keeping me from drifting away. I felt you too, Aaron admitted. That's just being human, Taesung said with a weak smile. No, Aaron said. That's being you. They sat in silence, hands joined, and for the first time since their wedding, the quiet between them didn't feel empty. It felt like possibility. Like the beginning of something real. Ji-woo visited that evening and cried when she saw her brother awake. Ha-jun came too, making jokes to hide his relief. Dr. Yunseo checked the monitors and declared the recovery ahead of schedule. Everyone smiled and celebrated, and Aaron felt a strange warmth in her chest that she didn't fully understand. Later, when everyone had left and Taesung had fallen into proper sleep, Aaron remained in her chair. She watched the gentle rise and fall of his breathing and listened to the quiet burning of his dreams. She had married him for peace, for duty, for her people. But somewhere along the way, something had changed. She was beginning to care for this human who burned so bright, and that terrified her more than any war ever could. 3 months passed. Taesung healed slowly, his burns fading to scars he carried without shame. The investigation found the attackers were part of an extremist group from both species. People who wanted the peace to fail. More security was added to their residence. More guards followed them everywhere. But inside their home, something had shifted. They talked now. Real conversations, not just polite exchanges. Taesung taught Aaron about human food, laughing when she made faces at the spicy dishes. She taught him words in her language. Beautiful flowing sounds that felt strange in his mouth. They watched the sunset together from the garden. Sitting close enough that their shoulders touched, Aaron felt herself falling, slowly and surely, into something she didn't have a name for. Love was an ancient concept among her people, something that developed over decades or centuries, but whatever she felt for Taesung was immediate and fierce, burning as hot as he did. Maybe she was becoming more human. Or maybe humans had always been right about some things. Then Ji-woo disappeared. The news came from Ha-jun, who arrived at their door in the middle of the night with fear on his face. Ji-woo had been on a research trip to an outer station. She never arrived. Her shuttle was found abandoned in neutral space, signs of forced boarding evident. No bodies, no demands, just emptiness. Taesung's reaction was instant and terrible. The careful control he maintained shattered. Aaron felt his rage like a physical force, hot enough to burn. They took her, he said, his voice deadly calm in the way that meant he was anything but calm. Someone took my sister. We'll find her, Ha-jun promised. Not fast enough. Taesung was already moving, pulling up maps on his datapad, tracking possible locations. I know who did this. The same extremists who attacked us. They failed to kill us, so now they're trying something else. Aaron watched him work, saw the soldier returning to the surface. What are you planning? I'm going after her. That's against the treaty, Aaron said. Unauthorized military action in neutral space. You could restart the war. Tae-sung looked at her, and his eyes were hard. She's my sister. My only family. I don't care about the treaty. The words hurt more than they should have. Aaron had thought they were building something together, but faced with this choice, Tae-sung didn't hesitate. His sister came first. As she should. But still, it hurt. Ha-jun cleared his throat. If you go, it's not just your life you're risking. It's everything we've built. The peace. The future. I know. Tae-sung's jaw was set. I'm going anyway. Aaron stood frozen, feeling the weight of the moment. She could stop this. She could call the authorities. Have Tae-sung detained for his own good and the good of their people. It would be the logical choice. The safe choice. The Velthari choice. She thought about what she had learned over these months. About how humans loved fiercely because time was short. About how they threw themselves into danger for the people they cared about. About how they burned bright instead of long. She thought about Tae-sung saving her life without hesitation. I'm coming with you, she said. Both men stared at her. What? Tae-sung said. If you're breaking the treaty, I'm breaking it with you. If this mission fails, they can blame both of us. If it succeeds, we save your sister together. Aaron straightened her spine. I'm your wife. Where you go, I go. This is insane, Ha-jun muttered. But he was smiling. You're both insane. I'm coming too. You don't have to. Tae-sung started. Shut up. You'll need backup. Ha-jun was already checking his weapon. Besides, someone has to keep you two idiots alive. They planned through the night. Tae-sung had contacts from his military days. People who operated in the shadows between law and chaos. Ha-jun knew security protocols and how to avoid them. Aaron used her diplomatic access to gather intelligence without raising alarms. By dawn, they had a location. A hidden facility in a dead system, known to be used by smugglers and criminals. Thelara, Aaron's handmaiden, found them preparing to leave. She was a younger Velthari, only 70 years old. With copper skin and sharp intelligence, she looked at the weapons, the stealth ship they had arranged, and nodded. I'm coming. You don't have to risk yourself, Aaron said. With respect, my lady, I choose my own risks. Thelara's voice was firm. Besides, you've shown me that sometimes duty means more than following rules. Let me follow your example. They left in secret, using a ship Ha-jun had borrowed from a friend who asked no questions. The journey to the dead system took 6 hours. During that time, Aaron watched Tae-sung. He was focused, running through scenarios, checking equipment. The burning intensity she felt from him was controlled now, directed toward one purpose. Saving Jiwoo. Thank you, he said quietly, when the others were busy. For coming, for risking everything. You did the same for me, Aaron said simply. That was different. That was one moment. This is... He struggled for words. This could destroy everything we've built. Then we'll build it again, Aaron said. Together. He looked at her with something like wonder. You've changed. Since we met. So have you. No, Tae-sung said softly. I've just stopped hiding. The facility appeared on their sensors, a cluster of structures floating in the void around a dead planet. Scans showed life signs, multiple guards, and in the center, one human signature that matched Jiwoo's biometrics. She was alive. They docked at a maintenance port, moving quickly and quietly. Ha-jun took point, his military training evident in every movement. Thelara used her empathic sense to detect guards before they rounded corners. Aaron found herself adapting to their pace, learning to move like a soldier instead of a princess. And Tae-sung led them deeper, following a path only he could see. Driven by desperate love and burning determination, they found resistance. Guards opened fire. Ha-jun and Tae-sung returned it. Their movements synchronized from years of friendship. Erin used a weapon for the first time in her life, surprised by how steady her hands were. Thalara proved surprisingly capable in combat. Her diplomatic training, including things Erin had never suspected. They fought through corridors and chambers, getting closer to Ji-woo's location. And as they fought, something extraordinary happened. They stopped being Velthari and human. They became a team. When Tae-sung was pinned down, Erin covered him. When Thalara was overwhelmed, Ha-jun pulled her to safety. They moved together, trusted together, fought together. This was what peace could look like. Erin thought wildly as she fired at attackers. Not politicians shaking hands, but people bleeding together for something that mattered. They reached the holding cells. Ji-woo was there, bruised but alive, her eyes widening when she saw them. "You came," she whispered. "Always," Tae-sung said, cutting her restraints. "Can you walk? I can run if needed." They made their way back, but alarms were screaming now. More guards appeared. The way they came in was blocked. Ha-jun found another route, through maintenance tunnels that barely fit them. They crawled and climbed. Ji-woo between Tae-sung and Erin, everyone breathing hard. An explosion rocked the facility. Someone had decided if they couldn't keep their prisoners, they'd kill them. The tunnels began to collapse. They ran, supporting each other, refusing to leave anyone behind. Tae-sung grabbed Erin when she stumbled. She pulled Thalara through a gap. Ha-jun carried Ji-woo the last stretch when her injured leg gave out. They reached the ship and launched with seconds to spare, the facility exploding behind them. As they jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the destruction behind, everyone collapsed in relief. "That was the stupidest thing I've ever done," Ha-jun said, and started laughing. Tae-sung hugged his sister, and Erin felt his overwhelming relief and love. She turned away to give them privacy. But Tae-sung reached out and pulled her into the embrace too. "Thank you," he said against her hair. "Thank you." Erin held him, felt his heart racing against hers, and realized something profound. She would do this again, break any law, risk any consequence, for this man who had shown her what it meant to truly live. They returned to Threshold Prime, expecting arrests. Instead, they found something else. News of their mission had leaked. Someone on their team had recorded everything and sent it to journalists. Both civilizations had watched them risk everything for one person. Watched a Velthari princess and a human soldier fight side by side. Watched them prove that their marriage was real. Public opinion shifted. The extremists lost support. People began to believe that maybe, just maybe, peace was possible. Standing in their home, facing a future that was uncertain but no longer empty, Erin took Tae-sung's hand. "We broke every rule," she said. "Worth it," he replied. She smiled. And for the first time since their wedding day, she felt truly married to this burning, beautiful human who had taught her that some flames were worth reaching for, even if they might burn you. 5 years had passed since the wedding, and everything had changed. Erin stood on the same balcony where she once watched Tae-sung practice his combat forms. But now she watched something different. Their daughter, Soo-jin, played in the garden below, chasing butterflies that existed on this human-made world. She was 4 years old, with her mother's violet skin and her father's dark eyes, a beautiful blend of both species, the first hybrid child. The living proof that their peoples could create something new together. Erin heard footsteps behind her and felt him before he spoke. After years together, she knew Tae-sung's presence, like she knew her own heartbeat. He wrapped his arms around her waist and rested his chin on her shoulder. "She's getting fast," he said, watching their daughter run. "She has your energy," Erin replied, leaning back against him. She never stops moving. She has your grace, though. Look at how she moves. Like dancing. They stood together in comfortable silence. This was a common thing now. These quiet moments where words weren't necessary. Aaron had learned that love didn't always need grand gestures. Sometimes, it was just standing together, watching your child play, feeling grateful for another ordinary day. But lately, the ordinary days had started to feel precious in a way that frightened her. Because Taesung was aging, and she was not. 5 years for a Velthari was nothing. Aaron looked exactly as she had on their wedding day, but Taesung had small lines around his eyes now, gray touches in his hair. He was only 37, still young by human standards. But the difference was starting to show, and it would only get worse. She would watch him grow old, watch him weaken, watch him die, and she would still be young, with centuries of life ahead of her. The thought made her chest ache in ways she had no words for. "You're thinking about it again," Taesung said softly. "About what?" "Time. My time." He turned her around to face him. "I can feel it in how you hold me lately. Like you're afraid I'll disappear." Aaron wanted to deny it, but they didn't lie to each other anymore. "Yes," she admitted. "I think about it constantly. How much time we have left. How little, compared to what I wanted." "How much did you want?" "Forever," she said, and her voice broke. "I wanted forever with you." Taesung smiled, that gentle smile she had come to love. "Forever is a long time. I'll give you what I can. 40, maybe 50 more years if I'm lucky." "Is that enough?" "No," Aaron said honestly. "But I'll take it. I'll take every moment you can give me." He kissed her forehead, and she felt the warmth of him, always so warm. "Good. Because I'm not going anywhere yet. I've still got plenty of life left to live with you." Their work had grown over the years. What started as a political arrangement had become a movement. Aaron and Taesung traveled between human and Velthari worlds, speaking about cooperation and understanding. They had become symbols of what was possible when people chose connection over fear. Ji-woo worked with them now, her research into hybrid biology helping to pave the way for more families like theirs. Ha-jun had married a Velthari woman himself, and they were expecting their first child. Thelara had become an ambassador, arguing fiercely for integration policies. The change was slow, but it was happening. But there were still those who opposed it. Still extremists who saw the peace as weakness. And on a quiet morning, when Soo-jin was playing in the garden and Aaron was reading reports, the news came. Taesung collapsed during a speech at the Unified Council. Heart attack. He was rushed to medical care, and Aaron felt her world fracture. She reached the hospital in time to see them working on him, human and Velthari doctors side by side, fighting to save him. Dr. Yunseo was there, older now but still with those tired, kind eyes. "His heart is weak," she said gently. "The stress, the old injuries, the genetic factors. We can stabilize him. But Areen, you need to understand. This is a warning. Humans aren't built to last as long as your people. We burn out." "Can't you do something?" Areen demanded. "Surgery? Medicine? Use Velthari technology? We're doing everything we can. But we can't change his biology. He's human. He's mortal." Yunseo touched her arm. "I'm sorry." Taesung survived, but barely. He spent a week in the hospital, and when he came home, he moved slower, needed more rest, smiled less. The fire that burned so bright inside him seemed dimmer, and Aaron felt panic rising in her chest. "I'm not ready," she told him one night, lying beside him in their bed. "I'm not ready to lose you." "No one ever is," Taesung said. His voice was quieter now, but still steady. "But that's the deal, isn't it? You love someone, knowing it won't last forever. You do it anyway because the alternative is worse. What alternative? Never loving at all. Never connecting. Living forever. But being alone. He turned to look at her. Would you rather have that? Centuries of life without ever knowing what this feels like? Erin thought about it honestly. Thought about the years before she met him, when she had been content, but not truly alive. Thought about what he had taught her about feeling deeply, living fully, loving fiercely. No, she said finally. I wouldn't trade this, even knowing how it ends. Good. He took her hand. Because I wouldn't either. Meeting you, loving you, creating Sujin with you, it's been worth every moment. I'd do it all again. The tears came then. And she didn't try to stop them. She had learned to cry from him, learned to let emotions flow instead of containing them. She cried for the time they wouldn't have, for the future that would be shorter than she wanted, for the unfairness of loving someone whose life burned so brief and bright. But she also cried because she was grateful. 6 months later, a new crisis emerged. A third alien species, the Korval, appeared at the borders of both human and Velthari space. They were powerful, aggressive, and saw the Alliance as a threat. War seemed inevitable. The Unified Council met in emergency session. Erin and Tae-sung were called to speak, to represent what peace had achieved. Tae-sung was weak now, needing help to walk to the podium, but his voice was still strong when he spoke. 5 years ago, I married this woman for politics, he said, gesturing to Erin. I thought it was duty, penance for my mistakes. I didn't expect to love her. But love doesn't ask for permission. It just happens. Erin stood beside him, adding her own words. My people measure success by longevity, by lasting forever. But humans taught me that length doesn't matter if there's no depth. A short life, lived fully, is worth more than centuries of emptiness. Together, they spoke about what they had learned, about how differences made them stronger, not weaker, about how love could bridge any gap if people were willing to try, about how their daughter represented a future where species weren't separate but beautifully blended. The Korval see our alliance and feel threatened, Tae-sung said. But we're not a threat. We're an invitation. Join us. Build with us. Create something new together, instead of destroying what already exists. The speech spread across all 3 civilizations. Public opinion shifted. The Korval hesitated, and in that hesitation, diplomats found room to talk. The war that seemed inevitable became a conversation. The conversation became negotiation, and the negotiation became, slowly and carefully, another chance at peace. Erin watched it happen and felt proud. This was their legacy. Not just Sujin, but the idea that different peoples could choose connection over conflict. Years passed. Tae-sung grew older, his hair turning silver, his steps becoming slower, but he laughed with Sujin, taught her about human history, and loved Erin with the same intensity he always had. He just couldn't hide it behind walls anymore. Everything he felt showed on his face, in his words, in the way he held her hand. On his 45th birthday, they sat together in the garden watching the sunset. Sujin had grown into a bright, curious child who spoke 3 languages and asked impossible questions. She was inside now, studying with Jiwoo. I'm tired, Tae-sung said quietly. Not in a bad way. Just tired. I've lived a good life. Better than I ever expected. Don't talk like that, Erin said, even though she knew. She could feel it in him, the way his soul was burning lower, preparing to fade. I have to. We have to talk about it. He squeezed her hand. When I'm gone, you'll still have so much life ahead of you. I want you to live it, really live it, the way I taught you. How can I not mourn you? Mourn for a while. That's natural. But then, live. Love again, if you find someone worth loving. Raise our daughter. Build the peace we started. Be happy. He smiled at her. That's what I want. Your happiness. Even without me. Aaron couldn't promise that. Couldn't imagine loving anyone else the way she loved him. But she nodded, because he needed to hear it. I'll try. Evern learned sman. Evern part. I'll try. That's all anyone can do. Try. They sat together as the sun set, painting the sky in colors that had no names. Aaron memorized this moment. The feel of his hand in hers. The sound of his breathing. The warmth of his presence. She would carry this memory for centuries, she knew. Long after he was gone, she would remember this sunset and the man who had taught her how to truly see it. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For burning so bright. For showing me how to live. For loving me. Even when I didn't deserve it. You always deserved it, Taesung said. You just needed to believe it. The stars began to appear in the darkening sky, distant and cold and eternal. But here in the garden, holding hands with the man whose soul blazed like a star, Aaron understood something profound. Those distant stars would burn for billions of years, cold and alone in the void. But Taesung's light, brief and fierce and warm, had changed everything it touched, had changed her, and that light would continue in Sujin, in the peace they had built, in every person who chose love over fear. Some flames lasted forever. Others burned bright and brief. But the ones that mattered most were the ones that shared their light before they faded. And as Aaron sat beside her husband, watching the stars appear, she knew she would carry his light forward, for as long as she lived. For all the centuries ahead, she would remember the human who had married her for peace and taught her that souls could blaze like stars if you let them burn freely. That was the gift he had given her. Not forever, but something better. A love that burned bright enough to illuminate the rest of her long, long life.